For decades, the giant A on the side of A Mountain, known as Hayden Butte to some locals, has overlooked the ASU Tempe campus. It's an iconic symbol of the university.
However, this was also the site of an explosion. In 1952, A Mountain, the symbol of Sun Devil pride, was dynamited by vandals. There's very little information about it on ASU's website, but I wanted to know more. How did that happen? How did the A become a target? Well, it turns out that the A on A Mountain wasn't always an A.
So we see in 1918, the N for normal school, because ASU is, of course, Tempe Normal School at that time, gets the N on the mountain. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that by that time, aircraft are a thing. And so aircraft are going to use visual markers. Not to mention, I'm sure people like the idea of, hey, there's a marker for the school up on the hill. It becomes Arizona State Teachers College. The N, actually, they keep one arm of the N and make it into a T. And then it becomes Arizona State College in the late 30s, I think 1938, and then it goes to the A.
Sun Devils built traditions around the A. For decades, at the start of each academic year, first-year students have climbed the mountain and painted the A white, and then, a couple weeks later, would lather it in gold before the first home football game. The tradition is called Echo from the Buttes. And it had just happened in 1952 before the A was changed forever. It was 2 in the morning on September 16, 1952, back when ASU was still called Arizona State College. Just 1 week prior, the first-year students had dressed the huge stone and cement letter with a fresh coat of white paint. According to the Arizona Republic, what would have been a peaceful morning in Tempe was interrupted by 2 blasts of dynamite, 15 seconds apart, which shook windows throughout the city. The explosion destroyed the bar of the A, scattering white fragments of rock down the hillside. The culprits fled under the cover of darkness, nowhere to be found. According to the Arizona Republic, Tempe police said the culprits lit the charges using fuses long enough to get out of town before the blasts.
And so, as far as we know to this day, nobody knows who actually did that. Now, we have our suspicions, I'm sure, because we all know there are certain rivalries.
Yes, those rivalries. You might be thinking the perpetrators' identities are obvious. ASU's bitter rivals over at the University of Arizona. The rivalry between ASU and UA is actually older than Arizona itself. The schools first played each other in a football game in 1899, with ASU, which at the time was called the Territorial Normal School, beating the Wildcats 11-2. Arizona then formally became a state in 1912.
For a long time, there weren't a lot of football teams formed, right? And it wasn't very competitive, right? And the first few years, the Territorial Normal School played like Phoenix College, the Indian School and things like that. Those were our competitors. But then as U of A grew, then that became our main rival in the state.
Since then, Sun Devils and Wildcats have been token enemies. And as with any good old school rivalry, it can get heated. If the Wildcats were responsible for the dynamiting of A Mountain in 1952, it wouldn't be the last time that they'd deface it. UA faithfuls frequently target the A, painting it their school colors on multiple occasions. And there are reasons to believe that UA pranksters were behind the dynamiting. Maybe the Wildcats were retaliating for their 61-14 loss at the hands of the Sun Devils the season before. However, at the time, the Arizona Republic reported that officers at the Tempe Police Department hesitated to blame students from any rival school, but pointed out that previous assaults on the A originated on other campuses. And I was like, previous assaults? Other campuses? What does that mean?
It turns out the A on A Mountain was dynamited twice.
5 years before the A was attacked in 1952, it was dynamited in 1947 by students from another rival school.
So 1947, actually it's on what then was known as Armistice Day. So it's November 11th. And it's early morning hours, I think about 2:30 in the morning. Basically, folks said, it sounded like an earthquake. And so when these officers responded, they saw a line of flashlights coming down the butte.
According to Tempe Daily News, the officers apprehended a group of students.
Although the school that they're apprehended from, we would tend to think, well, of course we know what school it is. Those pesky folks to the south. But we'd be wrong. It's actually Phoenix College students, which today seems kind of like, what? How is that a thing?
Turns out, ASU also has a budding feud with Phoenix College, a community college just north of downtown Phoenix. And in 1947, it got so heated that Phoenix College students dynamited the A, partially destroying it.
Well, what I think is funny is that when I was thinking about the rivalry between the two schools, it's not a natural rivalry because we didn't play each other in athletics at that time.
However, even though ASU and Phoenix College weren't football rivals, the campuses were close enough to each other for animosity to grow.
Our students would have known each other, probably went to high school together, some went to PC, some went to ASU. This was a very small place at that point in time. Phoenix was not very big in the late 40s. And so most students, this was the outskirts of town, actually. When this campus moved here, people were like, why are you moving so far out of town? Can you imagine that? This was the outside of Phoenix. And so ASU and this campus there were not a lot of other things between here and there. So I think the practicality of students coming and going between campuses was probably pretty easy.
Enter Bumstead the Bear, Phoenix College's mascot. In the 40s, a concrete statue of Bumstead the Bear sat on the lawn in front of Phoenix College's auditorium, and it was a ripe target for vandalism. Bumstead was tarred and feathered, painted rivaling schools' colors, and even straight up kidnapped and taken to other colleges, including ASU.
Evidently, it was hijacked by some other students from another college.
But the worst offense came in 1947 when vandals decapitated Bumstead with a sledgehammer and dynamite. And based on that year, you can guess who some Phoenix College students blamed.
But then when I think they blew up Bumstead, the students were probably like, well, that's just it. And I guess they felt the need to retaliate.
Clearly that rivalry was getting a little bit out of hand.
But what's really surprising is that even though Phoenix College students were responsible for the dynamiting of the A on that November morning in 1947, the Tempe Daily News reported that on that same morning, vandals discolored landmarks and wrote anti-UA slogans on UA's campus. Were those vandals Sun Devils responding to the dynamiting by taking out their anger on UA? And on top of this, the press used the dynamiting incident to generate excitement about the upcoming game between the Sun Devils and Wildcats, even though UA students had nothing to do with the dynamiting.
And even the newspaper, the Tempe Daily News, okay, here's this incident where they caught these Phoenix College students basically red-handed, and we're playing up the rivalry with U of A, even though that's not what happened here.
So, A Mountain was dynamited twice. And even though the culprits of the first dynamiting in 1947 were caught, chances are we will never know who was responsible for the dynamiting of the A in 1952.
But no matter the allegiance of the culprit who lit the fuse, Sun Devils were determined to make sure that the A was safe from that day on. In 1955, the A was rebuilt using reinforced steel and concrete, and it has never been desecrated in the same way since. And hopefully for any Sun Devils who thought UA students were responsible for the destruction of the A in 1952, their thirst for revenge was satisfied that year, as Sun Devils would go on to beat the Wildcats in football 20-18 that November.
Fact is that it gets down to rivalries are complex, and rivalries have shifted. And so rivalries that were once a really huge thing are gone in many cases because, say, the original school is gone or transformed, or just the scale of the rivalry has shifted.